A young man horrifically taken by a great white shark.
And he's blindsided by a great white.
Fatal attacks are extremely rare.
Hayes suffered serious bite wounds when that shark attacked him.
Henri Bource was having the time of his life free diving with seals off Lady Julia Percy Island. For Henry, it was always an exhilarating experience, but on this day, it was a nightmare instead. The seals suddenly vanished, leaving Henry isolated and vulnerable in the deep, dark water. From the darkness of the water emerged a large shadow. It was an enormous great white shark heading directly for Henry. The shark rammed him with such force it shattered his ribs. As he frantically tried to escape, the beast tore into his leg. The monstrous shark then shook Henry like a piece of meat and dragged him under. As the beast bit, ripping Henry's leg from his knee, he experienced an unexplainable sense of relief. It was a strange sensation of calm, and for Henry, a moment that would soon save his life. The waters of Lady Julia Percy Island in Australia is a seal and marine animal haven. It is rarely visited by sharks who only wander into the area to feed off of seals. Henri Bource was more of a victim of circumstance, and it is highly possible that the great white mistook Henry for one of the weaker seals and went in for the attack. Henry loved the water and always believed himself to be safe, but on that unfortunate day, he discovered for the first time that the waters of Lady Percy were not as safe as he imagined. Henri Bource was born in Rotterdam and moved to Australia as a teen. Living close to the sea, Henry was an adventurous young man who liked nothing more than scuba diving. In Australia, Henry would spend most of his day in the crystal clear waters of various reefs, pushing past his limits and diving deeper and deeper. Guided by his father, Henry soon became an expert scuba diver with a reputation to match. In fact, Henry was among the first people to use the famous aqualung, an open-circuit, self-contained underwater breathing device that became a huge commercial success. Besides being an accomplished scuba diver, Henry soon established himself as a popular filmmaker, musician, and graphic artist as an adult. On November 29, 1964, Henry, his two friends Dietmar and Fred, and a team from Port Fairy Manta Diving Club decided on a diving expedition to Lady Julia Percy Island, 22 kilometers from Port Fairy. The area is a haven for divers and tourists who flock there to see the fur seals who have made the island their home. The area is one of the largest for fur seal colonies in the world, with an estimated 27,000 seals living in the colony. When you've got that many juicy seals in one place, it can only be an open dinner invitation to an uninvited guest, the great white shark. The great white shark, also known in Australia as a white pointer, is one of the world's deadliest and largest shark species. You just don't want to mess around with these guys. Just a few days earlier, Henry and his friends were informed that a white pointer had been spotted by a fisherman who pegged its size as big as his boat, which was 4.6 meters, a whopping 15 feet. Nevertheless, Henry and his team were not bothered because they had been to Lady Julia Percy Island several times before. Lady Julia Percy Island is a fascinating place and more than 7 million years old. It was formed from volcanic rock, which developed into a landmass and separated from the Aussie mainland at the time. The island is full of vertical cliffs and sea caves, home to an incredible variety of ancient sea life. The water surrounding the island is approximately 30 to 50 meters deep, with strong waves constantly smashing the shoreline. For Henry, it was an adventurer's paradise. But on that ill-fated day, it would unfold into a gory drama that would haunt Henry and his friends forever. As they approached the waters of the island, Henry put on a black hooded wetsuit. Just as Henry readied his filming equipment, he overheard some of the boat crew talking about another great white spot in the area. It seemed they had heard a story from locals about a monster called Big Ben, rumored to be 20 feet long. The awkward time of mentioning such a frightening thing would have made any diver skittish with second thoughts, but not Henry. The thought of seeing a white pointer fascinated him even more. It would also allow him to shoot some fantastic footage. At around 12:45 p.m., Henry jumped off his boat, camera in hand. He filmed underwater for over an hour but found nothing interesting and thought of going elsewhere. He resurfaced and shouted to his companions, Dietmar and Fred, to accompany him on a second dive, which they willingly obliged. The three friends decided to swim closer to the island and soon found a group of seals playing around in the waves. Henri thought it would make for great footage to capture and decided to leave the others behind, swimming closer to the group of seals. In the middle of the group was a bull seal, so obviously it was his harem, but the seals are not aggressive. Soon, some of them came closer to Henri, nudging him as if inviting him to play. Henri decided to throw caution to the wind and focus on getting the best shots. The fact that he ignored the risk of sharks was strange, seeing how he was such an expert on such matters. It could have saved him the macabre torture he was about to endure. Research on seal colonies in the area showed how great white sharks do not usually enter the water, but use it to check in, much like people at drive-through restaurants. Henri suddenly noticed something odd. One by one, the seals began vanishing, but why? Before the thought could hit his brain, he was hit by a powerful force, unlike anything he had ever experienced in his life. Underwater, he could not quite clearly make it out, but then a shadow passed, and he froze in terror. It was a great white, and it was 15 feet long. It was a white pointer and a hungry one at that. It had come hunting for lunch. The blow from the shark's nose stunned Henri, possibly breaking his ribs, but Henri was too dazed and shocked to notice. The ferocious attack knocked Henri's mask and snorkels off. He swam upward frantically, his life depended on it. As soon as he surfaced above the water, he tried to scream, but his lips couldn't utter a sound. The shark turned around and tore into Henri, biting down hard on his leg. The searing pain of endless serrated teeth sawing through his leg swept through his body like an electric shock. It jolted him so badly that he finally found a scream channeling its way out of his mouth. "Shark! Help!" Henri yelled, waving his hands in the air. But he disappeared again instantly as the white monster dragged him down under. It was then that Henri caught a proper glimpse of his predator, and he could not believe his eyes. It was Big Ben. With his leg in the jaws of one of the biggest great whites he had ever seen, only one thought raced through Henri's mind. He was a goner. Henri tried shaking his leg free, but those gargantuan jaws did not let him escape. The hungry monster shook Henri like a dog with a chew toy. The blood turned the water red, and if something wasn't done by Henri or his friends, he would end up as the latest victim of Big Ben. Dietmar and Fred heard Henri scream, and when they looked in his direction, they were horrified. Henri was thrashing about in the water, his bloodied leg playing hide-and-seek above and beneath it. They knew by the blood that flowed from it the shark had got a hold of Henri's leg. Fortunately, they had a spear gun and swam towards Henri quickly. By now, Henri was almost drowning, his vision blurred, and what seemed like an eternity was all of 45 seconds. The shark battered Henri, who knew there was nothing he could do, but suddenly, he felt a weird and strange sense of relief. He felt a sudden calm engulf his body and felt nothing where the shark had bitten him. There was no more pain, no tightness. Was he dead? His question was answered when he lifted his arm to swim. No, he wasn't dead, and yet the shark was gone. Henri swam upward. Somehow, he could only move one leg. Perhaps the attack on his leg had made it numb. When he surfaced, he looked at his leg to assess the damage, but nothing was there. Big Ben had torn Henri's leg away from the knee. All Henri saw was a bloody stump in the water. Ironically, Big Ben came for a takeaway and settled for a leg piece, and that probably saved Henri's life. If Henri thought he was finally safe, he wasn't. Big Ben soon returned for a second helping, but Dietmar and Fred were ready this time. They fought the shark with as much courage as they could muster, pumping spears into him. That was too much for the great white, who recoiled in pain from the spears. He somehow felt it wasn't worth it and swam away. Dietmar and Fred then pulled Henri towards the boat. Henri was losing consciousness and hanging on to life by a thread. On the boat, he was administered first aid, and fortunately, an ambulance was waiting for them when they reached the shore. Henri was given a blood transfusion in the ambulance because he had lost so much. He was then rushed to the emergency room where doctors tried saving him. With so much blood loss and broken bones, he was close to death. There have been more shark attacks since Henri's, one being Teresa Cartwright. a mother of 3 who was killed on Tasmania's 10th island. But Henri was among the lucky ones to survive being eaten alive by a shark. Henri's disability did not prevent him from diving again. As an advocate of shark awareness, he went on to make a documentary, Savage Shadows, as a precautionary measure to encourage beachgoers to be more careful. Do the general public and commercial tourism take the risk too lightly? Should there be more restrictions and warnings in shark territory? We may never know, but another group of people may have an answer for a similar situation, shown on screen.